I will be voting no on ACA 8, which is a proposed constitutional amendment that the voters will decide during an unnecessary, unbudgeted, expensive special election this December. By voting to pass SB 280, ACA 8, you are voting to appropriate funding for a costly special election at a time when California faces painful budget cuts to health care, education, housing, and other critical services. This $230 million could go a long way to support your Planned Parenthood programs in California. So I suggest maybe you also talk to the governor. He's spending $230 million. I could better go for health care, mental health, housing, homelessness, all the long list of horribles in the state of California. Yet he can find $230 million out of the deficit-based budget to fund this election.
Would you like to respond?
May I respond to that?
Yes.
I just want to be very clear because I think facts matter. The governor's proposal was to cut that funding. The legislature rejected those cuts, and the final adopted budget restored all of that funding for health care, including funding to Planned Parenthood. It should also be noted that California pays over $80 billion in federal taxes that we don't get back. $70 billion of that went to Texas. That's money that is also being cut from Head Start programs, education programs, veterans benefits, and I find it horribly offensive that $40 billion of our own money couldn't return home for disaster aid in Los Angeles, and not a single Republican in this legislature is demanding that it come home. So if we're talking about the cost of a special election versus the cost of our democracy or the cost that Californians are already paying to subsidize this corrupt administration, those costs seem well worth paying in this moment.
May I just respond to that?
Bryan. Yes.
Just briefly. It's still $230 million is nothing to blink your eyes about. It is money that could be allocated for costs other than a special election. If it sits there in the budget, why not put it to health care? Why not put it to all these issues that are very important in California? But suddenly $230 million materializes as essential. Democracy is not hanging by an edge. I think this is really overstated and it's hyperbolic, and it does not do a respectable service to the people of California to engage in that kind of hyperbole. Thank you very much.
The last thing I will say to that is just I wish we had this same conversation when we ran several pointless recalls in the last few years. Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues. I'm here to present ACA 8 on behalf of Speaker Robert Rivas, Pro Tem McGuire, and over a dozen of us who are co-authors in this effort to protect democracy. We're living through an unprecedented moment in American history where our democracy faces daily attacks from the White House and from this administration. This constitutional amendment, along with the two companion bills, are a measured and thoughtful response to the power grab that is happening out of Washington, D.C., a power grab that seeks to further erase the rights of 40 million Californians who are counting on us. Let's be clear, this is not a fight that we sought out, but this is a fight that we are prepared to fight and prepared to win. ACA 8 exists because Trump and the Republican-controlled Texas legislature and other states like Indiana and Florida are attempting to redraw congressional districts in the middle of a decade, pre-census, with the explicit aim of diluting black and brown representation and power and tilting next year's congressional elections in favor of the authoritarian in the White House. Their maps are not about fair representation. Their maps are about retaining power at any cost, without accountability, without transparency, without the voters of those states getting their say. They want to retain control in Congress at any cost to continue their goals, to protect the wealthy, the president, and his corrupt companions, while gutting the liberties of everyday people, working people, and struggling families, especially here in California. We deserve better. California deserves better. The American people deserve better. ACA 8, also known as the Election Rigged Response Act, is our defense against Trump's unprecedented power grab. It would implement the temporary use of the maps outlined in AB 604 if and only if the people of California approve it. The people of California will get the final say. If ACA 8 and the companion bills in the legislature are passed on a special election on November 4th, those district boundaries will be used. That's the main difference, by the way, here in California. See, here in California, unlike Texas and some of these Republican-led states, we respect the people. We respect the voters, and we believed that they have the autonomy and authority to make major decisions like this that have national consequences. These maps will be used through the 2030 congressional term only, and only if Texas and other states enact their partisan gerrymandering, their power grab of their own congressional districts at the behest of the president. We will stand down if they stand down. But if they step forward, we are ready to fight fire with fire. The trigger provision in the ACA is carefully crafted to ensure that a mid-decade redistricting required by a federal court order doesn't result in California changing its map. This is only in response to an authoritarian power grab. I'm joined by two incredible witnesses, Jody Hicks, who's the CEO of Planned Parenthood, and Pastor Trina Turner, one of the current commissioners of the 2020 Independent California Citizens Redistricting Commission.
Thank you. And each witness on both sides will have 2 minutes each, both for opposition and supporters. So 4 minutes total on each side for our main witnesses. You can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I am Jody Hicks, the CEO and President of Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California, here to represent all 7 affiliates and over 100 health centers throughout the state of California. And I'm here in strong support of ACA 8 and California's response to Texas or any state that is trying to game the 2026 midterm elections. And I know this is the Appropriations Committee. I know that we have someone who will talk about the commission. I want to talk about the impact to California. And I think we heard yesterday a lot of why California would respond to what Texas is doing. And it's because the impact to Californians is so great. And if we are not able to have a fair election, if we're not able to fight back in the way that we need to, we're not standing up for our values here in California, and we're certainly not defending Californians. If you remember, here in California, 67% of voters voted to ensure that California is a reproductive freedom state, that our Constitution ensures that Californians have access to reproductive health care. What just passed in Congress defunds Planned Parenthood on day one. So when we talk about the cost of what we're doing today, just on that one piece of that bill alone is taking away $300 million in federal dollars away from the services that Planned Parenthood provides. And we are not talking about abortion services. Those are already not federally funded. We are talking about every other service that 1 in 4 women here in California rely on, which is cancer screenings, birth control, oftentimes prenatal care. The rest of that bill has 3.5 million folks in California that will be without health care in our state, not to mention the other economic sanctions. Thank you. So it's imperative that we're able to fight back. We know if Planned Parenthood or anyone else talks about the impacts of what just happened, Congress members will be held accountable, but we're not able to do that if Texas is rigging the election ahead of time. So thank you.
Thank you. And you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Trina Turner, executive pastor, also, though, here today as a commissioner for the 2020 Redistricting Commission. And I'll read so that I can make best use of my time. I'm proud to have served in the 2020 California Citizens Redistricting Commission, following the will of the people to draw the fair maps that honor California's diverse communities of interest. Our work, was rooted in independence, transparency, clear voter mandate that the politicians should not choose their voters. But we have to be honest in the moment that we're in. There's a breach of trust in our democracy that has already happened, and it's hitting Black and brown communities hardest. We've watched our current administration dismantle DEI programs, send in National Guard and Marines into LA, DC, under false claims of keeping order or stamping out rampant crime. The reality, crime has already been down in many of those areas, but the very programs in our communities, the one that has been proven to work, they're being cut, creating the very instability that will be used to justify more force and more control and fewer rights. So it's short-sighted for California to only think about California. I watched the hearings on yesterday and wanted to say that if we stand on principle while our nation disintegrates, we're part of the problem. And are we really thinking about all of California? Because I think the 3.1 million children, veterans, and families in California that will lose food off of their tables would tend to disagree, California. I think the 2.4 million Californians that will lose access to health care due to Medicaid cuts would disagree. There's been a lot of discussion about protecting lines drawn by the will of the people, lines that I'm very proud of. However, the discussion is emphasizing the importance of independent redistricting. That's fair, but we're doing that at the cost of millions of Californians. There are groups that I respect that says that Newsom is dead wrong in this. Gerrymandering is a threat. However, I want to say that marginalized communities is the exact reason why we need to move forward with ACA 8. I'm in total support of it and believe it the right thing for our nation.